A pale-skinned inmate stood in the prison cafeteria, pouring water all over a black prisoner's plate while the crowd laughed at the scene. He mocked the man, calling him kid, soaking his food just for the entertainment of the others. Nobody in that room realized that the man sitting there was no ordinary prisoner. He was once a respected sailor and a former MMA champion. The bully threw the first punch, whistling through the air, and what happened afterward stunned everyone. "Look at you, kid," the man sneered, "acting like this is your damn restaurant." His voice carried weight, harsh and loud. His name was Wade Harker, though in here, everyone knew him by his prison name, Iron Jaw. His tattoos weren't just decorations, in this place, they were warnings carved into his skin. A chain dangled around his neck, a swastika burned into his shoulder, and prison gang symbols covered his body like a resume written in scars and ink. Across from him, sitting quietly with a small comb in his hand, was Malik Carter. He was tall, lean, and his eyes held a kind of calm that felt like staring into deep water. His orange jumpsuit had his name stitched neatly on the chest, but he carried himself differently than most of the broken men around him. Where most inmates seemed hollowed out, Malik's solitude radiated something stronger, controlled, centered. But for men like Wade, that kind of quiet came off as weakness. The cafeteria was jammed with inmates, the noise of trays and voices bouncing off the concrete walls. Yet when Wade stepped forward, it was like the whole room froze. Tension spread like a heat wave, and everyone felt it. Wade carried a plastic pitcher of water in his hand, strolling over and pouring it directly onto Malik's plates, piled high with noodles and fried rice. "This ain't no damn buffet, kid," Wade barked. "Who the hell do you think you are, stacking up 4 plates like you own this place?" His voice was sharp, laced with venom. Malik didn't even flinch. He simply picked up his chopsticks and started eating his noodles calmly, which only made Wade's temper boil hotter. He slammed the pitcher onto the table, rattling the trays and silverware. "You want an answer? Here's one." With one quick move, Wade tipped the pitcher, dumping the rest of the cold water over Malik's head. It drenched his clothes, his tray, and turned his noodles into mush. Water dripped from Malik's eyebrows, sliding down his face, but he didn't scowl. He didn't even move. The cafeteria exploded with laughter, some inmates doubled over, others turned away, pretending they hadn't seen anything. The guards leaning against the wall didn't intervene. They'd seen this kind of humiliation before, and sometimes they even enjoyed the show. "Yeah, that's what I thought," Wade spit, literally spitting on Malik afterward. "A little monkey, sitting in my house, eating my food. I know what you are." Those words landed heavy. The air in the cafeteria seemed to tighten, harsh and bitter. For Malik, though, insults like that weren't anything new. He'd heard them his entire life, at a gas station when the cashier questioned if he could even afford to pay, in crowded rooms where people assumed he was a driver instead of the executive in charge, or on sidewalks where women clutched their bags tighter when he walked by. That sting never truly faded, but here, in this prison, it was more than just words. Here, it was a challenge. An open insult. Malik slowly set his chopsticks down and finally raised his eyes to meet Wade's. His stare was steady, dark, and unblinking. "It's done," Malik said quietly. His voice was calm but carried a dangerous edge, smooth and controlled. Wade laughed, rolling his shoulders like he'd been waiting for this. "Oh, so he talks now. Yeah, you're done all right. Done pretending like you're somebody. You're not anyone in here. You hear me? Nobody." From the back of the room, Wade's gang started shouting in unison. They slammed their fists and trays against the tables, chanting, "Nobody! Nobody! Nobody!" The sound shook the cafeteria, drowning out everything else. Malik sat still, water dripping onto the floor beneath him. His silence wasn't weakness, it was calculation. He breathed slowly, remembering the lessons drilled into him long ago: lose first, never be the one to complain, never let rage take the lead. Discipline was the real weapon. In his mind, the cafeteria's noise blurred into the memory of another place. A training camp on a hot island, sweat stinging his eyes as his coach screamed instructions in his face. Years in the cage of mixed martial arts, fighting under bright lights as crowds shouted his name. Nights spent in war zones, where silence kept him alive and discipline was the only thing that kept him from being killed. Right now, none of Malik's past is visible on his face. To Wade, he looks like just another inmate, an ordinary black man with no allies, someone soft, easy to pick on. Wade leans in close, his breath reeking of cigarettes. "What's the matter, boy? Cat got your tongue? Or do I need to teach you how my cafeteria works?" Wade taunted. His crew burst into laughter again, loving the show. Malik lowered his gaze, almost as if he was surrendering. From Wade's point of view, the moment was filled with smug satisfaction. But inside Malik, something had shifted. It wasn't fear, and it wasn't anger, it was something sharper. Determination. Across the cafeteria, an old-timer named Jerome, someone who had been locked up long enough to read a man's eyes, narrowed his own. He caught sight of something that nobody else noticed. Malik's calm wasn't weakness. It was the steady calm of a predator. Jerome muttered under his breath, "These fools don't know who they're messing with." But Wade wasn't slowing down. He grabbed Malik by the front of his shirt and yanked him upward. "You look at me when I'm talking to you," he barked. Malik's body lifted, but his feet stayed planted firmly on the ground. His stare locked onto Wade's, sharp and unflinching, like a predator sizing up its prey. "I already told you," Malik said, his voice steady and low, calming the room with its sheer control. "It's over." Those words froze the air. There was something in his tone, cold, measured, that sent a chill through the cafeteria. A few inmates even laughed nervously, not realizing the storm that was about to break. Wade, too arrogant to sense the danger, sneered back. "You think you're tough? You think you're some kind of man? You're nothing." Before he could finish his sentence, Malik's hand moved, but not to strike. Not yet. He waited, holding back with the discipline drilled into him over years of training. The room went silent, every breath held. Inmates leaned forward, guards shifted uneasily, but no one stepped in. Everyone knew, it had begun. A racist bully trying to humiliate, and a quiet man whose silence hid something none of them could imagine. When Wade raised his fist high, Malik's body, restrained for so long, was ready to be unleashed. The cafeteria wasn't a cafeteria anymore. It was a coffin. And Malik Carter wasn't just another prisoner. Wade's punch cut through the air like a hammer, but Malik wasn't there when it landed. He slipped aside like smoke drifting away. Wade's momentum dragged him forward, wide open. Malik's hands shot out, seizing Wade's wrist and twisting it with ruthless precision. A sharp crack echoed across the room, bones snapping under Malik's grip. Wade let out a guttural cry, his massive frame folding against Malik's chest. The cafeteria erupted, men gasped, some jumped on their chairs to get a better look. "Oh my God," one inmate whispered. Wade staggered, off balance, swinging wildly with his free hand. Desperate. Furious. Malik stepped in close, his fist driving like a spear into Wade's ribs. The sickening thud made the whole room wince. Wade's body shook, his strength faltering. The laughter was gone now. Nobody was entertained anymore. Malik's movements weren't wild or uncontrolled, they were sharp, efficient, built on years of discipline. His face stayed calm, his eyes cold. He moved like a machine built for combat. Wade tried to crush Malik with his sheer size, but Malik turned his body, using Wade's own weight against him. In one fluid motion, he flipped the bigger man onto a table. Plates shattered, food flew, the crash echoing like a cymbal through the room. The untouchable monster was nothing more than a half-broken man on the floor. Wade groaned, trying to push himself up to his knees, but Malik loomed over him, dripping wet, unreadable, relentless. With one last desperate swing, Wade tried to salvage his pride. Malik's counter came quick, one step, one pivot, and his fist cracked against Wade's skull with brutal accuracy. The sound was sharp and final. Wade's body locked for a moment, then collapsed like a tree crashing to the ground. The room froze. Silence swallowed the cafeteria. Every eye locked on Malik, standing over the man they once thought untouchable. Guards rushed forward, their boots squeaking across the linoleum floor, but even they hesitated. They'd seen plenty of fights before, but not like this. This wasn't anger. This wasn't chaos. This was precision. Controlled violence. Malik calmly wiped his wet hands on his shirt, then picked up his overturned tray, placing it neatly back on the table beside the ruined food. With absolute composure, he sat back down, as if nothing had happened. The silence stretched until Jerome, the old convict who had seen it coming, finally broke it. His raspy voice carried across the stunned cafeteria. "You all don't even realize," Jerome muttered, tilting his head as his sharp eyes swept across the cafeteria. "That man right there, that's Malik Carter. United States Marine. A decorated war hero." The room went still. "And you ever hear of cage warriors?" Jerome's voice grew louder, carrying over the silence. "Former middleweight champion. That's him. That ghost you've all heard whispers about." The words hit the cafeteria like a grenade. Inmates leaned into each other, whispering fast, like fire catching dry grass. "Wait, the ghost. No way. That's him. I saw him fight once, years ago. Didn't he knock out Castillo in the first round? What the hell is he even doing in here?" The convicts buzzed with disbelief, their voices tangled between awe and confusion. Even the guards exchanged uneasy glances. Everyone suddenly understood, Malik Carter wasn't just some inmate. He wasn't just some guy. He was a weapon. A legend. And Wade had chosen the wrong man to humiliate. One of the guards finally snapped out of it. "Carter. Stay seated. Don't move." Another echoed, hands on the table, "Carter. Right now." But Malik didn't fight back. He didn't need to. His message had already been delivered. Wade's crew, the so-called tough guys, sat frozen in place. Their leader was sprawled out on the floor, broken, his eyes glassy, his spine bent like a busted chair. The cafeteria's self-proclaimed king had been dethroned in seconds. The silence grew heavier until Malik finally spoke. His voice was steady, cutting through the tension like a blade. "You think strength is about how big you are? How many tattoos you've got? How many men you've got backing you?" He paused, letting the words sink in, every inmate and guard hanging on the silence. "Real strength, true strength, is discipline. It's patience. It's knowing when to wait, and when to strike." His eyes shifted to Wade, who lay broken at his feet. "And you never, never, judge a man by the color of his skin." The cafeteria held its breath. His words weren't only for Wade. They weren't just for Wade's gang either. They were for everyone in that room, convicts and guards alike. Because in prison, respect was the only currency that mattered, and Malik Carter had just bought more of it than anyone could ever steal. The guards dragged Wade's battered body away, his reign of terror crushed in an instant. His crew sat still, blinking but silent, none of them daring to move. The hierarchy of the cafeteria had been rewritten with a single act. Malik sat back down at the same table, his jumpsuit still dripping, his food ruined. He calmly picked up a handful of soggy noodles with his chopsticks and ate them like nothing had happened. For him, it wasn't about showing off strength or claiming dominance. It was about teaching a lesson, one that should have been obvious from the start. Jerome pushed himself up from his table, shaking his head. "Damn," he muttered, his raspy voice carrying. "You just rewrote the rules in here." Whole prison's gonna be talking about this until the day you walk free. Malik didn't smile. He didn't boast. He just said, let them talk, and went back to eating. The cafeteria buzzed with whispers, but his calm drowned them all out. In a world built on fear, intimidation, and false power, Malik's silence was the loudest voice in the room. Later that day, as the guards escorted Malik out, a young inmate barely 20 years old stared at him wide-eyed. The kid's voice cracked with nervous awe. "Mr. Carter, how do you stay so calm? Aren't you afraid?" Malik glanced at him, his voice soft but heavy with meaning. "Fear is real, son. But so is control. And the man who controls his fear, controls everything." The chains rattled against the floor as Malik walked on, leaving that young man forever changed. And the cafeteria would never forget the day Malik Carter turned insults into history, and silence into the loudest roar anyone had ever heard behind prison gates. And if you feel that moment too, if Malik's words hit you the way they hit that cafeteria, don't just scroll past. Because stories like this aren't just entertainment. They're truth, forged in fire. And you don't want to miss what comes next.